Succeed: How We Can Reach Our Goals by Heidi Grant Halvorson, Ph.D. Ever scratch your head wondering why even the world's most powerful, disciplined people sometimes stumble on the simplest goals? Picture this: a man about to become President of the United States, someone with extraordinary discipline and determination, makes a promise to his wife. He's going to quit smoking, once and for all. His intentions are rock solid. His wife's demand is, as he calls it, ironclad. By any reasonable measure, this guy knows how to get things done. And yet, he struggles. He quits, falls off the wagon, quits again, falls off again. This isn't really a story about a president, though. It's about you. It's about me. It's about that New Year's resolution that quietly dies sometime around Valentine's Day. The gym membership collecting dust in your wallet. The diet that ends at midnight with your hand in a donut box. That passion project you keep meaning to start but somehow never do. We all have goals we're desperate to reach, and when we don't, we usually blame the same thing: willpower. We tell ourselves we're running low on it, that some lucky people were born with steel determination, while the rest of us got, well, something less impressive. But here's a thought. What if that whole story we tell ourselves about willpower being some magical trait you either have or don't is almost completely wrong? What if getting what you want isn't about having more willpower but about actually understanding how goals work in the first place? Today we're diving into a fascinating book called Succeed: How We Can Reach Our Goals. The author, Dr. Heidi Grant Halvorson, is a social psychologist who's devoted her career to studying one thing: achievement. She's watched thousands of people chase their goals and discovered that most of us, even the brilliant high achievers among us, completely misunderstand why we succeed or fail. This isn't some motivational pep talk filled with empty platitudes. It's built on decades of serious scientific research into what makes humans tick. Dr. Halvorson basically pulls back the curtain on our brains and shows us the hidden machinery of motivation. Here's what I'm promising you. By the end of our time together, you'll see your own goals through completely new eyes. You'll understand that failing isn't a character flaw, and succeeding isn't some happy accident. You'll learn that anyone, including you, can get better at reaching their goals. You'll walk away with a toolbox of simple, practical, scientifically proven strategies you can start using today to beat procrastination, resist temptation, and finally turn those wishes into real results. So let's dive in and uncover the science of success. Let's tackle that old ghost haunting all our failed goals: willpower. We imagine it as some kind of heroic inner force. Either you've got it or you don't. The marathon running, kale eating, never procrastinating people, swimming in it. The rest of us, not so much. But Dr. Halvorson asks us to think about it differently. Let's drop the dramatic term, willpower, and call it what it actually is: self-control. And here's the kicker. This self-control isn't some fixed personality trait. It's much more like a muscle. Let that sink in for a second. A muscle. What happens when you use a muscle? It gets tired, right? If you keep lifting that heavy weight, eventually your bicep is going to give out. Your self-control muscle works exactly the same way. There's this fascinating experiment by psychologist Roy Baumeister. He brought hungry college students into a lab that smelled absolutely amazing, like freshly baked chocolate chip cookies. On the table, he put out 2 bowls, one overflowing with those warm, gooey cookies, the other filled with radishes. Yeah, radishes. Some lucky students got to munch cookies and ignore the radishes. The others? They got the cruel assignment: eat radishes while somehow ignoring those heavenly cookies. Just imagine the mental gymnastics, the sheer self-control it took for those hungry kids to crunch on bitter radishes, while chocolate chip heaven was sitting right there. They were basically doing bicep curls with their self-control muscle. Afterward, both groups got a puzzle to solve. The puzzle was secretly impossible, But the researchers wanted to see how long students would keep trying before giving up. The results were striking. The cookie-eating students worked on that puzzle for about 20 minutes. But the radish-eating, cookie-resisting students? They quit after just 8 minutes. Their self-control muscle was wiped out. They'd burned through all their strength on those radishes and had nothing left for the puzzle. This is happening to you every single day. Every time you bite your tongue in traffic, make a tough decision at work, or force yourself to be pleasant when you'd rather scream, you're depleting this resource. Even the world's most successful people are constantly draining this tank. Oprah Winfrey, who's basically the definition of discipline, has talked openly about her weight struggles. She realized it wasn't just about eating less, but about her life being out of whack, with way too much work and not nearly enough play. She said, "I let the well run dry." That's a perfect way to describe a depleted self-control muscle. So if our self-control is limited, are we doomed? Actually, no. And this is where the muscle comparison becomes really empowering. First, just like a muscle, when it's tired, the fatigue is temporary. Give it a rest, and your strength comes back. That's why resisting temptation feels absolutely brutal in the moment. But if you can just power through that first wave of desire, it often gets easier. You've given your muscle a breather. And second, here's the best part. You can actually make the muscle stronger. You can build more self-control. How? Same way you get bigger biceps. Regular workouts. Research shows that daily activities requiring just a bit of discipline, things like tracking your spending, consciously sitting up straight whenever you think about it, or even brushing your teeth with your non-dominant hand, can build your overall self-control capacity. In one study, students who stuck to a daily exercise routine not only got fitter, but also became less likely to blow money on impulse buys and more likely to keep their apartment clean. The strength they built at the gym was showing up everywhere else in their lives. This completely changes how we should think about failure. When you cave on your diet after a brutal day at work, it's not because you're weak. It's because your muscle is exhausted. The answer isn't beating yourself up. It's understanding the muscle and either giving it time to recover, or better yet, starting a training program to make it stronger. But having a strong muscle is only part of the equation. You also need to know where you're headed, which brings us to the foundation of everything, the goal itself. Most of us have heard the advice, just do your best. Sounds nice and supportive, right? Motivating even. But according to research, it's actually terrible advice. It's basically a recipe for mediocrity. Why? Because do your best is hopelessly vague. What does your best even look like? How would you know when you've hit it? Without a clear target, we tend to do just enough to feel like we've made a decent effort, then call it a day. The science of goal setting, pioneered by psychologists Edwin Locke and Gary Latham over more than 1,000 studies, shows that the most effective goals share two qualities. They're specific and they're difficult. Lose some weight is a wish. Lose 10 pounds is a goal. It's specific. Either you did it or you didn't. No wiggle room, no letting yourself off the hook. But specificity alone isn't enough. The goal also needs to be difficult, not impossible, but genuinely challenging. Difficult goals cause us to unconsciously ramp up our effort, focus, and commitment. We stick with things longer and even discover better strategies along the way. There's a great story about a logging company where truck drivers were only filling their trucks to about 60% of the legal weight limit. They didn't have a specific target, so they just did what felt okay. A researcher came in and gave them a new goal: fill the trucks to 94% of the limit. Challenging, but doable. 9 months later, the drivers were averaging over 90%, saving the company millions. People rise to meet the challenges you set, both for others and for yourself. And here's a beautiful bonus. Succeeding at something hard brings way more satisfaction than succeeding at something easy. It creates what Locke and Latham call a high-performance cycle, where success and happiness feed each other. So we need specific, difficult goals. But how we think about those goals matters just as much. Any goal can be framed two ways. You can think about why you're doing it, or you can think about what you're doing. Say your goal is cleaning the house. You can think of it as keeping things tidy, that's the why, the big picture, the purpose. Or you can think of it as vacuuming crumbs off the floor, that's the what, the nitty-gritty mechanics. So which is better? Well, it depends. Thinking in why terms is incredibly motivating. It connects your small daily actions to something bigger. Staying an extra hour at work feels like torture if you think of it as typing for 60 more minutes. But if you frame it as advancing my career, suddenly you've got energy to spare. Why thinking is your fuel. It helps you resist temptation and stay locked on your long-term vision. When you're eyeing that dessert menu, you don't think about the what, skipping this piece of cake. You think about the why, becoming healthier and more confident. But sometimes why thinking can trip you up. When you're tackling something difficult, unfamiliar, or complex, it's much better to think in concrete, what terms. If you're learning to ski, you don't think about gliding gracefully down the mountain. That's how you end up wrapped around a tree. Instead, you focus on the what. Keep my knees bent, keep my ski tips together. The what breaks complex tasks into manageable chunks. There's a clever study where experienced coffee drinkers were asked to drink a cup of coffee. Some used a normal mug. Others got a weird, heavy, awkward mug. Afterward, they described what they'd just done. The normal mug people preferred why descriptions, like getting energized. But the heavy mug people strongly preferred what descriptions, like raising a cup to my lips and swallowing. To handle the difficult task, they had to focus on mechanics. The trick is being a mental shapeshifter. When you need motivation or self-control, think why. When you're dealing with something tough or new, think what. This brings us to one of the biggest traps in self-help land, positive thinking. We're constantly told to visualize success and believe we'll crush our goals. And there's truth to this. Believing you can succeed is hugely important. But there's a subtle, dangerous mistake we often make. Dr. Halvorson points out there are two kinds of positive thinking. First is believing you're likely to succeed. Second is believing success will come easily. One of these is incredibly helpful. The other is basically setting yourself up for failure. Believing in your ability to succeed, what psychologists call having high expectations, is a powerful motivator. One study on home gym equipment found that people who truly believed they could stick to a routine were nearly 3 times more likely to still be using their equipment a year later. Confidence counts. But what about believing the path will be a cakewalk? Psychologist Gabrielle Oettingen has studied this extensively, and her findings are eye-opening. In one study, she followed obese women in a weight loss program. The women who believed they'd succeed lost an average of 26 pounds more than those who believed they'd fail. That confirms the power of positive expectations. But Oettingen also asked them to describe their fantasies about the process. The women who imagined it being easy, effortlessly resisting donuts and loving every workout, lost an average of 24 pounds less than the women who imagined the journey would be tough. Let that sink in. Fantasizing about easy success made them less successful. The same pattern shows up with job seekers, people pursuing relationships, even patients recovering from surgery. People who think reaching their goal will be a breeze simply aren't ready for the inevitable obstacles. When reality smacks them in the face, they crumble and quit. So what's the answer? It's a brilliant technique called mental contrasting. Simple 2-step process. First, you vividly imagine achieving your goal. Picture that positive outcome and how amazing it'll feel. That's the whole thinking positive part. Then immediately follow with step 2. You reflect honestly on the obstacles in your way. If you want that high-paying job, first imagine yourself accepting the offer at your dream company. Then think about reality. All those other brilliant, qualified candidates competing for the same spot. What does that do? It makes you feel the urgency to act. It transforms a pleasant daydream into a concrete action plan. It makes you want to start firing off applications right now. Mental contrasting harnesses the power of positive thinking while keeping you grounded in reality. It gives you both the inspiration of the dream and the preparation of a realist. It's one of the most powerful goal-setting techniques you'll ever learn. Now, we've talked about how to set goals, but not where they come from in the first place. The choices we make are profoundly shaped by beliefs we don't even realize we have. One of the most powerful hidden beliefs is about a simple question: can people change? Specifically, do you believe intelligence is fixed, or can it grow? This is the groundbreaking work of psychologist Carol Dweck. She discovered people generally fall into two camps. Some are entity theorists. They believe you've got a certain amount of intelligence, period. You're either smart or you're not. Others are incremental theorists. They believe intelligence is flexible, something you can develop over time through experience and learning. Why does this matter? Because this single belief changes everything about the goals you pursue. If you're an entity theorist, if you believe your intelligence is fixed, your primary goal in any achievement situation becomes proving you're smart. You want to look good and avoid looking dumb at all costs. You want validation. As a result, you avoid challenges. Why risk trying something difficult and failing? That would just prove you're not smart enough. You stick to what you already know you're good at. This is a trap. You shortchange yourself, dodging experiences that could enrich your life simply because you're too worried about proving yourself. But if you're an incremental theorist, if you believe you can get smarter, your goal isn't proving you're smart, it's getting smarter. You want to develop your abilities. Challenges aren't threatening, they're opportunities to learn. Mistakes aren't proof of stupidity, they're valuable feedback. In a telling study at the University of Hong Kong, where all classes are in English, researchers approached students who weren't yet fluent and offered them a remedial English course. The entity theorists, the ones who believed intelligence is fixed, wanted nothing to do with it. Only 13% were interested. They figured a remedial course wouldn't help, and worse, it would publicly expose their weakness. But the incremental theorists, who believed they could get smarter, 73% jumped at the chance. They saw an opportunity to grow. Here's the most important thing: the entity theory is wrong. Decades of research prove intelligence is profoundly flexible. Experience, effort, and opportunity matter enormously. Believing you can get smarter isn't just a nicer outlook, it's scientifically accurate. Embracing this truth frees you from constantly needing to prove yourself and opens the door to lifelong growth. Our beliefs aren't the only hidden force shaping our goals. Our environment is constantly nudging us in directions we don't even notice. The vast majority of goals you pursue daily operate entirely without your awareness. This happens through environmental triggers. In one experiment, people constructed sentences using words like cooperative, support, and fair. Afterward, they played a fishing game where they could either keep fish for personal profit or return them to a common pond to benefit everyone. The people exposed to cooperative words returned 25% more fish than those who weren't. Simply reading those words unconsciously triggered the goal to cooperate. This is called goal contagion. We can catch goals just by seeing others pursue them. Reading about a student working for money makes you work harder on a subsequent task for money. This is why role models are so powerful. They don't just inspire us consciously, they infect us with their goals unconsciously. The good news? You can use this. Become the architect of your own environment. Want to exercise more? Leave your running shoes by the door. Want to eat healthier? Put a fruit bowl front and center on your counter. Fill your surroundings with cues that trigger the goals you want to achieve. Let your unconscious mind work for you. So far, we've explored a lot about the nature of goals, but now let's dive into two of the most important mindsets you can adopt. The first big distinction is between having a goal to be good versus a goal to get better. A be good goal is what psychologists call a performance goal. It's about proving yourself. You want that A to show you're smart. You want to hit your sales target to prove you're capable. Your self-worth is tied to the outcome. You either win or lose. No in between. This can be motivating, especially for easy tasks. But it has a dark side. When things get tough and you stumble, it's easy to conclude, maybe I'm just not smart enough. That thought is crushing. It shakes your confidence, creates anxiety and helplessness, and often leads to giving up. A get better goal, on the other hand, is a mastery goal. It's not about proving what you are, but becoming something more. It's about progress. When you pursue a mastery goal, you judge yourself not by a single outcome, but by whether you're improving over time. Difficulties aren't a verdict on your ability, they're a natural part of learning. If you get a C on your first exam, you don't think, I'm a failure. You think, what can I do differently next time? How can I improve my approach? Dr. Halvorson saw this firsthand studying pre-med students in a brutal freshman chemistry course at Columbia University. For many, it was their first truly difficult class ever. Students focused on be good goals, on proving their smarts through grades, tended to fall apart after a disappointing first exam. Their performance actually got worse over time. But students with get better goals, focused on truly mastering the material, showed the opposite pattern. They used setbacks as fuel. They improved with each exam and ended up with higher overall grades. When persistence is key to success, a get better mindset is your greatest asset. The second crucial distinction is between a promotion focus and a prevention focus. This is psychologist Tori Higgins' work, and it's a game changer. Both mindsets can lead to success, but they feel completely different and need different strategies. Think of it this way. Are you playing to win or playing not to lose? A promotion focus is about achievement and accomplishment. It's about reaching for your ideals and maximizing gains. The motivation you feel is eagerness. When you succeed, you feel happy and joyful. When you fail, you feel sad and dejected. Promotion-focused people are motivated by positive feedback and optimism. They're risk-takers. They work quickly. They're creative. They're great at brainstorming. Their motto is, nothing ventured, nothing gained. A prevention focus is about safety and responsibility. It's about fulfilling obligations and minimizing losses. The motivation you feel is vigilance. When you succeed, you don't feel elation, you feel relief. A calm sense of, phew, dodged that bullet. When you fail, you feel anxious and nervous. Prevention-focused people are actually motivated by negative feedback and a touch of pessimism. The thought of what could go wrong gets them moving. They're cautious and meticulous. They value accuracy over speed. They're great at resisting temptation and not letting things slip through the cracks. Their motto is, better safe than sorry. Neither focus is inherently better, but one might suit a particular task better. Need to be creative and work quickly? Promotion focus is your friend. Need to be accurate, careful, and resist distractions? Prevention focus is the way to go. The key is matching your strategy to your focus. When something feels right, it's usually because your actions align with your underlying motivation. This brings us to the ultimate question. What kinds of goals actually make us happy? It's not just about achieving any goal. Turns out some goals are like junk food. They might feel good momentarily, but they don't provide lasting nourishment. According to self-determination theory, developed by psychologists Edward Deckey and Richard Ryan, all humans have 3 innate psychological needs that must be satisfied for genuine well-being: relatedness, competence, and autonomy. Relatedness is needing to feel connected to others, to love and be loved. Competence is needing to feel effective and capable at what you do. Autonomy is needing to feel you're the author of your own life, that you're acting from your own free will and choice. Goals that feed these needs, goals about building relationships, personal growth, and contributing to your community, are the ones leading to lasting happiness. Goals about external markers of self-worth, like seeking fame, power, or wealth for its own sake, are the junk food. Even if you achieve them, they won't satisfy your fundamental needs and often leave you feeling empty. The need for autonomy is especially powerful. When we pursue a goal because we want to, not because we have to, we experience intrinsic motivation. This is the best kind of motivation there is. It leads to more enjoyment, creativity, persistence, and better performance. But this motivation is fragile. It can be crushed by anything we experience as controlling: threats, deadlines, surveillance, and yes, even rewards. There's a classic study where preschoolers who naturally loved drawing with markers were offered a Good Player Award for their drawings. They drew like crazy to get the award, but weeks later, when the reward disappeared, they completely lost interest in the markers. The reward had turned play into work. It destroyed their intrinsic motivation. The lesson is profound. To be truly motivated and happy, we need to feel a sense of choice. And when motivating others, our kids, students, employees, giving them a feeling of choice, even in tiny ways, can make all the difference. We've covered a lot of ground. We've talked about building our self-control muscle, setting specific goals, using mental contrasting, and choosing the right mindset. But there's one final tool Dr. Halvorson presents, and it might be the most practical and powerful of them all. It's called if-then planning. Most of us don't fail our goals because we lack commitment, but because we miss opportunities to act. We get busy, distracted, and the moment slips away. If-then planning is a simple way to solve this by essentially pre-programming your brain. You take a goal and spell out, in advance, exactly when and where you'll take action. The format is simple. If situation X happens, then I will do Y. Eat healthier becomes, if it's lunchtime on a weekday, then I'll eat a salad. Exercise more becomes, if it's 7 a.m. on Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, then I'll go for a run. Call my mom becomes, if it's Sunday after dinner, then I'll call my mom. This simple act of planning does 3 magical things in your brain. First, it makes your brain start scanning the environment for the if part. Second, when that situation shows up, your brain spots it immediately. Third, the then part, the action, is triggered automatically, without you needing to consciously think about it or burn precious self-control. You've created an instant habit. The effectiveness of this technique is almost unbelievable. In a study about Christmas essays, students who made an if-then plan for when and where they'd write were more than twice as likely to complete the assignment as those who didn't, 71% versus 32%. In another study, 100% of women who made an if-then plan to perform a breast self-exam did so, compared to only 53% who didn't. This works for dieting, quitting, smoking, exercising, and even with patients recovering from brain injury and heroin addiction. It's, without question, one of the most effective strategies for turning intentions into actions. Finally, we have to acknowledge that sometimes success means knowing when to quit. Persistence is a virtue, but blindly persisting in an unattainable goal or one that's costing you too much is a recipe for misery. Dr. Halvorson says there are 2 good reasons to give up a goal. First is when you realize you simply don't have the resources, the time, or energy to pursue it without sacrificing other, more important goals. Second is when you realize the cost of achieving it is just too high, it's making you unhappy and stressed. Notice neither of these reasons is, I don't have the ability. If you decide to let a goal go, the crucial next step is finding a new goal to take its place. This allows you to disengage without losing your sense of purpose. It keeps you moving forward rather than looking back in regret. From the self-control muscle to the power of if-then planning, the science of success offers us a new way of seeing our own potential. It's not about being born with some special gift. It's about understanding the rules of the game and using the right strategies to play it well. Success, it turns out, is a skill. And like any skill, it can be learned. As we wrap up our journey through Succeed, I find myself thinking about its most powerful and liberating idea. For so long, we've been sold a story about achievement that centers on mysterious, innate qualities: talent, genius, willpower. It's a story that can feel inspiring if you think you've got those qualities, but deeply discouraging if you don't. When we fail, we make it personal. I'm just not disciplined enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm just a procrastinator by nature. What Heidi Grant Halvorson does so brilliantly is replace that old, flawed story with a new one grounded in science. She shows us success isn't a mystery, it's a process. It's a system of cause and effect. And once you understand the system, you can learn to work with it. The shift from blaming our character to examining our strategy is perhaps the most empowering gift this book offers. It's the difference between saying, "I'm broken," and asking, "Is there a better tool for this job?" The idea of the self-control muscle, for instance, reframes failure not as a moral failing, but as a predictable state of fatigue. This simple perspective shift opens the door to self-compassion and a practical path forward: rest, recover, and train for strength. Similarly, the distinction between be good and get better goals is a revelation. So many of us, especially when we're young and ambitious, get caught in the be good trap. We see every test, project, social interaction as a performance, a verdict on our worth. This book gives us permission to step off that stage and enter the workshop. It reminds us, life isn't a final exam, it's a learning process. Adopting a get-better mindset is like trading a fragile ego for a resilient spirit. If there are just a few things you take away from our time together today, let them be these simple, actionable steps. First, pick one important goal in your life right now. Just one. Spend 5 minutes reframing it. Make it specific and difficult. Ask yourself if you're trying to be good or get better, and consciously choose the latter. Think about the why behind it to fuel your motivation. Second, create a single if-then plan for that goal. Identify one specific action you need to take and decide exactly when and where you'll do it. Write it down. If it's 8 p.m. on Tuesday, then I'll spend 30 minutes working on my college application essay at my desk. Feel how that simple sentence transforms a vague intention into concrete reality. And third, start your self-control workout. Choose one small, consistent act of discipline. Maybe it's making your bed every morning without fail. Maybe it's not checking your phone for the first hour of the day. Doesn't matter what it is, only that you do it consistently. Think of it as a small investment in your own capacity to achieve. That was a summary of Succeed by Heidi Grant Halvorson. We've touched on the main ideas today, but a summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country. It shows you the layout, but it can't replace the experience of walking the trails, seeing the landscapes, and breathing the air yourself. The real power of this book lies in the details, the dozens of fascinating studies, the subtle insights, and the way ideas build on one another. If anything we've discussed has sparked something in you, I encourage you to grab a copy. Reading it isn't just an act of learning, it's an act of empowerment. It can fundamentally change how you approach every single day. A link to the book is in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable on your own journey of growth, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to Billionaire's Bookshelf. That way, you won't miss our next exploration into another book that can change your life. Let's continue to learn and grow together.